We looked at the associations of exhaled carbon monoxide and stroke incidence in the Framingham Heart Study. And we also leveraged cross-sectional data from brain MRIs to look at measures of vascular brain injury by MRI. Well, I think this is a study that just shows, really leverages the incredible depth of data that's available in Framingham and the ability to follow people for 13 years after a baseline measurement. And I think it just shows, the power of that sort of observational study. One other thing that we were able to do is, instead of just selecting one carbon monoxide measurement, we were able to average the measurements over 3 examination cycles to get a really precise estimate of the carbon monoxide exposure for each individual. So carbon monoxide, we always think of as an environmental pollutant or a silent killer, but in fact, carbon monoxide is endogenously produced during the metabolism of heme, which is the enzyme heme oxygenase, which produces carbon monoxide, is present in many cell types in the body, and so we are all exhaling carbon monoxide at some point, and heme oxygenase and carbon monoxide seem to be upregulated in the setting of oxidative stress or physiologic stressors. What we found is that increases in carbon monoxide exhalation, meaning as a proxy for circulating carbon monoxide concentrations, are associated with an increased risk of stroke and an increased risk of having brain MRI findings consistent with vascular brain injury. This means that this pathway is important to the pathogenesis of stroke, and I think some of the biology needs to be further worked out in terms of whether carbon monoxide is really the primary actor here, or whether it's a reflection of heme oxygenase activity. What it seems to be is that carbon monoxide rapidly diffuses across the alveolar capillary membrane, and so it's really just a measure of circulating carbon monoxide concentration. So it doesn't directly correlate with ventilation as much as it does with the concentration in the blood. I think this is really more of a study to validate some of the biology and some of the experimental work that's been done in labs across the country, and we've now shown that this pathway seems to be really integral in different parts of atherosclerotic vascular disease. Other members from our group have shown associations with metabolic syndrome, subclinical cardiovascular disease, and cardiovascular disease incidence, and so now we've extended that to stroke, and I think it just highlights the importance of this pathway. But I think for the individual patient, there's not much yet to take away from that. Really trying to untangle a little bit of the biology, the underlying biology at play here, I think is really the next step. I think the opportunity to think about measuring serial carbon monoxide levels and see whether changes correlate with cardiovascular health, I think would be really meaningful and further would provide further evidence that carbon monoxide is really integral and not just a reflection of something else going on in the body. There also have been experimental studies looking at carbon monoxide donors as a pharmacotherapy in mouse models, and those seem to have some benefit in cardiovascular disease, and so I think modulation of this pathway is something that could be looked at in experimental studies and looking towards, moving towards patient studies. Fortunately, it's going to continue to go on for hopefully many years, and the next examination cycle will be starting up in April with many new measures of this 3rd generation of the Framingham Heart Study, and we hope to include a 4th generation soon. So the Framingham Heart Study was really, integral in the evolution of understanding cardiovascular disease and cardiovascular disease risk factors, and that started with understanding that essential hypertension with a blood pressure of 100 plus your age was not necessarily the best way to treat people, and that that was understanding of really what a normative blood pressure is in the population, and the risk that elevated blood pressure imposes is really a major contribution to the Framingham Heart Study, and that's really continued through the years, and into the genetic era, the genomic era, and understanding some of the genetic influences on cardiovascular risk. And I think we have a lot of work to do. There's still many people with cardiovascular disease, and I think understanding what happens in a community sample, leveraging now 60 or 70 years of family data is really a powerful tool.